Okay, there we go.
Hello. Welcome to this presentation, Art and Education in XR. I'm Dr. Steve Guynup, and this is a presentation that I have run for, well, the last decade. I've run it as an online summer class with students from the University of Moscow, Idaho, Columbia's Teachers College, Miami University. And I'm also doing it as a workshop, how to be creative in VR for the Serious Play Conference. Now, in this space with me is Brian Cleveland. He's a faculty member in the VTD program at the University of Moscow, Idaho, and he has been supplying me with interns, wonderful students. If you ever need some help, definitely get in touch with him. And along with me then is also Dr. Sharon Kibbe, Associate Dean of STEM at Southern New Hampshire University, and Max Callahan, also Associate Dean, Game Design.
Brian, can I ask you to close the sidebar on frame, please?
See, I'm a new hire, and we are looking at using VR to teach game design, VR, and more. Not everything is worked out, but it's in development, and we're talking, and hopefully good things will come, because let's face it, if we're going to have the next generation of students develop this technology and do the heavy lifting, we need to actually have them in these spaces learning and having that hands-on experience about what works and what doesn't. So some of what you're seeing here may end up in an upcoming class for them. So my take on design is a mashup of art and poetry and education in VR. And this is a big kind of creative and conceptually vast and maybe even a little messy idea. But all these things, this art and poetry, allows you to push your thinking about what could be educational in this space. How do you push past just doing another simulation, and how do you get creative and be effective? And more importantly, how do you do it easily and simply? So as you follow along with this actual presentation, if things seem kind of simple and easy, that's a good thing. So when I said art, consider this as a starting point, that an art installation is a lot like an educational installation. You can kind of sense that there's something creative that you can spin out of that artwork. I said poetry earlier, and you can think of poetry as a series of art installations. And if you understand and buy into that, then a series of educational installations becomes an educational presentation. So being creative and open to art will help you do more innovative work. And my focus on art is in part because I teach my students and the people who come to my workshops that realism and reality and 6 degrees of freedom, they're tools. They're not goals. And as you develop these spaces, it's fundamental that you learn to wield reality as a tool, that you edit and compose it to create belief and behavior in your users. So what do I mean by that? And well, let's actually take a look at some work. We're in virtual reality. So for starters, I mean, slides are useful sometimes, but you want to see work. And these are actual projects by Brian's students. And you can imagine that we had some wonderful conversations about the modeling and design, but also the meaning of this work, about children and technology on the left, and technology and healthcare on the right. These sorts of installations created by you or your students can become talking points and places for them to express themselves and ways for you to think about your own educational practices. And with that in mind, let's do a mashup on our own terms right now. Education, an icebreaker is something that you've all done for a class. And a common icebreaker is just asking people what their favorite foods are. So if I can get some suggestions from our audience here, what's your favorite food? Awesome. All right. Apple pie. FrameVR has a feature that lets me do a Google image search or a model search and actually bring that image into the scene. So let me give a second to type that out and get it. And here we go. Apple pie. And me, I'm feeling a little more snacky. So I'm going to give you guys some Cheetos. This is pretty common, pretty straightforward. We can turn this, though, into an educational talk about VR with this little bowl that I've got below. Because you may like apple pie and you may like Cheetos, but you may not actually like them in the same bowl. And this is a way to think about virtual reality, because everybody out there has their own opinions, their own backgrounds, their own experiences about what they like and don't like about VR. And one of the challenges that we have as developers and designers, even just talking about this, is trying to fit everything on our plate, trying to find a common language. And sometimes, well, you can't. Cheetos and apple pie don't necessarily go all that well together. So hopefully I will, well, get you to like Cheetos. Also, get you to consider to empty your bowl and join me on a bit of discovery. Okay. Hey, icebreaker that brings in our audience and gets to talk about VR. Pretty straightforward, and hopefully you get a sense that this was inspired by an art installation. 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a group of people about healthcare and social issues and mental health. And rather than having VR in the plate, family members were all types of food. And sometimes different types of food fit on the plate, and sometimes you want them on separate plates. And sometimes you want different meals. So there are like just lots of ways that you can interpret this sort of installation building approach. Going even deeper, a friend of mine who teaches game design is using these installations. He's asking his students to name 3 things they love about a video game and express it, and build an installation or scene based upon that. So there are some really creative, just entry-level things you can do with this art in terms of creating a dynamic classroom situation. Now, standalone installation is one thing. Earlier, I mentioned poetry. So what does that actually mean? I've got my refrigerator magnet stuff here. And, you know, we can bring these things out and make an epic, brilliant world. Whoops. And make it blue. A brilliant blue even. So maybe that's an installation, but consider this, in virtual reality, we've got this ability to use space. So epic should be big. And maybe brilliant is something we discover in the background. And you can begin to see that we can put our installations in space and create a story and a journey. In fact, you can put the world at your feet, or even give it a little twist and have it be a big jam. And I think that we all want to have an epic jam session with our students in these spaces. This is the cool stuff that we can do. But more than that, this is also the foundation of video game level design, about how you view space in a video game, creating meaning in instances and expressiveness as they travel through the level. You can then take that video game expressiveness and then just loop it back to education. Poetry is our starting point. Poetry is something you just imagine your work, not just as art, but as a poem, and the creative juices will start flowing in your work. So why don't we see more of this? Why are there barriers here? Why is there a wall? Well, let's actually run through the wall. You guys can push the W key and move forward. Hey, Brian. Yeah. First of all, anyone who thought that poetry and poetry transitions was nonsense, guess what? That was a poetic transition. Now, on my left, we've got a medical simulation and dinosaurs. These are both worlds that benefit from realism. I mean, I want my simulation to be as realistic as possible. And my dinosaurs, I want them to be immersed in that dinosaur world. But our classroom, over here on this other side, our class space, I'm not sure we get a lot of benefit from a classroom that looks like a classroom. I don't want to lock my students in chairs. And if the education is real, if the knowledge is real and the learning is real, there's no belief to suspend. You focus on the story and what you're sharing, I think you'll be better off. Now, we don't have much time, so this space, for the folks at home, think about what this is. Can you identify it? You got 1 second. This is a classroom from the Library of Alexandria. This is what a classroom looked like 3,000 years ago. It makes sense now that you know it. You can see the functionality. You can see where people sit and present and how they enter and exit. Reality, a tool to create belief and behavior. Very much like this stage that you're standing on. Because you can strip away reality, which is overwhelming. I mean, this blue infinite sky is wonderful. But when you go so far, I know that people struggle to do bigger things. It almost gets to be black. And with that, there's nothing. It's sort of infinite possibilities of virtual reality that it's just so challenging. Embracing art, embracing the story, using reality as a tool opens up an entire universe for you. And maybe we'll throw a spaceship in and a place for you to stand. Now, I'm checking my clock, and that's 4 p.m., so I don't know if we have any time left.
No, yeah,
but,
we're just...
if there are any questions or any thoughts, I'll take them.
If you could hop into one of the chats, if you want to answer those questions, we do have to move on. But thanks so much, Steve, for your little tour. It's great to see a lot of the embodied pieces that you've been able to put together.
Brian,
there.
Can you open up the chat? There is a link for my email and a link for some free resources if anybody wants.
Okay. Guynup.
Also, how are we doing on time?
ANEVEVRIO.
Yeah, you may
That's.
want to unmute.
I'm not sure if Steve can hear me, so but we are out of time. So thanks, Steve, for all.